The hospital doors swung open as Nelson and his MTEs wheeled Lincoln inside and down a long hallway leading into the ER with Rita and Lynn Sr. following close behind. Once they reached the ER doors, however, the nurse stopped the two of them from getting any further as the several doctors and nurses took Lincoln into the ER. I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Loud, but visitors aren't allowed in the ER without permission. You need to wait inside in the waiting room for now. The doctors will inform you of your son's condition once we've been examined. No, I won't leave his side. Rita, calm down. There's nothing we can do. We'll only be in the way. Rita insisted at first, but then gave in when she realized that arguing wouldn't get him anywhere. So, she and Lynn Sr. followed Nelson into the large waiting room where Lori and her other sisters currently were. Their old display expressions of fear, sorrow, and uncertainty. Luan was there as well, but she sat far across the room hallway from the rest of her family, and too ashamed to even look at them. Lori was currently texting Bobby and her new college friends about what happened to Lincoln when she looked up to see Rita and Lynn Sr. enter the room. Mom, Dad, how's Lincoln? Bad. One of his lungs apparently got punctured by the broken rib and filled with blood. The MTAs had to drain it with a tour car in an ambulance so he wouldn't suffocate. Oh, God. Where is he now? Lincoln is in ER. They're examining him now, but they'll notify us of his conditions once they thoroughly examine him. Well, I hope Lincoln doesn't die on us. Don't say that. Lincoln is a very strong kid. He'll pull through. I know he will. Meanwhile in ER, Lincoln was currently running through a CT X-ray until the doctor named Lloyd Florence and the four nurses he had recently transferred from the hospital in Trenton, New Jersey to Royal Woods, Michigan a year ago, and was known as a best doctor and surgeon of a Royal Woods. Before Lloyd became a surgeon back in Teaneck, he legs and is out, dislocate jaws and fractured hips, but this is by far the worst he ever seen. Lois had been informed by Nelson about the cause of Lincoln's injury and held a pretty much guess that he was in for very unpleasant results, and he is correct by that. In the CT scan's results display in a computer scan in front of Lloyd, it shows a massive skull fracture in Lincoln's forehead, with a piece of shattered skull actually embedded into the frontal lobe of his brain. Lincoln's temporal lobe also shows a sign of severe bruises. And a broken area of the brain and only in a few other areas also received heavy damage. Lincoln's spine has also broken near whistle area. And as one of the MTs had suspected earlier, the scan revealed the three of Lincoln's right side ribs had broken, which had caused a puncture of his right lung. His left rib cage has also had a broken rib, but luckily they didn't have a protrusion in his left lung. Lloyd didn't know how is it possible for a 14-year-old kid that received injuries to this extent to be alive. By some miracle, or perhaps by divine intervention, Lincoln was able to pull through. Lloyd knew without a surgery, though, Lincoln would have survived for long. This is far worse than I thought. We need to get him to the surgery room right away. I'll need to operate immediately. Roderick, Doc. This is going to be a while, Lloyd said as he watched Lincoln be gently laid on the stretcher, though his glass window of a room separating him from the scanner chamber and the dialysis chamber. I need to fix his skull. Try to mend his spine the best I can. Then reset the broken bone in his forearm and ribcage. A few years later, Lincoln was in a surgery room, being prepped for a long surgery by Lloyd and his team of nurses. An IV needle with a sleeping medication was inserted into Lincoln's left arm. A few areas of his head shaved for brain surgery. A heart monitor that represented a hookup to him. They also had to strip Lincoln down in just his socks and his underpants in order to reach areas where the surgery room would be performed of his spine. After doing this, the surgery begins. It's around 5:14 p.m. by the time Lincoln's surgery was fully complete, and his parents' siblings were still patiently waiting for the results. A nurse had informed them several hours ago that Lincoln would be heading into the surgery, yet they informed as how long it would take, nor to what internal injuries he had received. Mom, do you think Lincoln will be alright after this? I don't know, Laura. We'll just have to see what the doctor says. As if on cure, the doors to the ER opened and the door with a brown crew cut hairstyle entered the room. It's Lloyd. He noticed a loud family all waiting in the corner of the waiting room and head towards Rita and Len Sr. Hello there. You must be the Mr. and Mrs. Loud, I presume. Yes, I'm Lincoln's mother. And Len Sr. here is my husband. And these are the 10 girls. Here is our children. Laura was surprised at how many siblings Lincoln had. He never met a family with this many children before, yet this made Lloyd feel a bit bad due to the results he had from Lincoln's condition. He had been the bearer of bad news, but this is definitely one of these times. My name is Dr. Lloyd Florence, the one who performed surgery of your son, Lincoln Loud. Oh, Doc, please tell me Lincoln is all right. He's still alive, right? He is alive, and he'll live. Thank God. You didn't let me finish. I said that Lincoln will live, but I wouldn't exactly call it living. What do you mean, Doctor? What do you mean, Dr. Florence? What I meant is that Lincoln will live, but he'll never be the same again. The injuries he received from that refrigerator falling from him were extremely severe. So much that I can't understand how he didn't die from it. Lincoln should be dead, but he isn't. His spine got broken near his wrist area, so he'll be paralyzed from the wrist down, meaning that he'll be confined to a wheelchair for the remainder of his life. Because of this, his back will also be a contested agony for the rest of his life as well. Lincoln won't be able to so much as twist himself left or right without causing himself pain. I did my best to try and repair the spinal damage, but it's too severe to completely fix. So Lincoln, It's not going to be ever walk again. No, Lincoln. Yes, like I said, it's worst. But I'm sorry to say that this is even the worst of it. What do you mean? Lincoln's brain received possibilities some of the worst damage imaginable. His skulls were severely fractured and cracked in several areas, with damage impaired some of his higher brain functions. The worst part of it being his forehead. A piece of Lincoln's cracked skull actually got stabbed into the frontal lobe of his brain from a force of impact, and his temporal lobe was bruised very badly, which damaged his cerebral cortex. Because of this, Lincoln will end up with severe memory loss. He may not remember who he is, or who you are, or who he is himself. Over time, as his brain heals, he might recover some, but not all of his memory. He'll end up having memory gas because of it. Due to the damage of his frontal lobe, Lincoln will no longer be able to cohere sentences, care for himself, eat properly. He'll be taking care for the rest of his life, such as being fed, dressed, bathed, and he'll also have to put in a diaper as well as until he was reduced enough to use a toilet. If even possible to sum it up, Lincoln's mind was pretty much end up being sent back to the midlands of a taller or mentally retarded person. And it will be this way for the rest of his life. I really mean no differences, or what can I say? But if it were me in Lincoln's shoes, I would have much rather pursued death. Because like I said, this isn't what I call living. The time seemed to stand still in the entire Lau family. At these horrible words left at Lloyd's mouth, they're all desperately wish that this is just a horrible nightmare. They can wake up safe at home, and there's no way they could deny it. What they just heard. Nor could any fool themselves. They all knew for the absolute fact that it's true. There is no denying it. Why would a doctor have any reason to lie to them? No. No. No! Oh, my son. This can't be happening. The rest of Lincoln's siblings lost it and began crying uncontrollably as well. Even Lily. Luan, however, felt sick from hearing what she just heard from the doctor to tell them all. Lincoln was now a shell of his former self. It was all her fault. She felt a bride rise in her throat, but Luan forced it to back in as hard as she could, not wanting to show her such weaknesses in front of her family by poking. Luan was 17 years old now, and she wouldn't let her weak pride get the better of her. I'm really sorry, but there's nothing I can do about it. Believe me, when I say I tried. But Lincoln's injuries were just far too severe to completely fixed. Where is he now? And he is in the recovery room right now, but he's not conscious yet. The anesthesia hasn't fully worn off yet, so Lincoln will be asleep for at least another hour or so. Can we see him? Yes, I'll show you all to the recovery room. Beyond the doors was long T-shaped hall with a sign on the wall at the end. The left hall lead to the surgery room, right hall lead to the recovery room. The two doors near the ER entrance lead to the X-ray room and the CT scan room, where Lincoln where he had been examined hours earlier. Lloyd and the Loud family lead the Loud family right hallway into a large rectangular room with 6 hospitals bed against the wall. 5 of them were empty, but the bed furthest to the left was occupied by none other than Lincoln. He's now in a blue hospital gown with the front slightly open. He had an IV needle in his left arm, which simply put his body with fluid to keep him hydrated. A cast around his right arm, the bandages in his chest and head, a heart monitor was also hooked up to Lincoln's chest to monitor his vitals. Lincoln! Bro! Son! Soon the rest of the Lincoln sisters crowded his bed, of them crying softly. Lily even reached her hands out towards Lincoln with a sad expression, but was held back by Lori. How long will he be in here? Will his recovery take a while? Well, I managed to stitch it up his punctured lung and frontal brain lobe with the bionicle stitches and reset his brain ribs. I also reset the broken bones in Lincoln's left forearm and stitches. However. The percher fresh wound up before putting the cast on it. And I mended his skull and his spine the best I could. His broken arm should fully heal in a few weeks or so. However, it will be a last in a month until the Lincoln's internal injuries will be fully healed. So he'll be in a hospital for at least a month or at best. Rita wasn't too surprised by this, nor did Lynn Sr. and the rest of his family, with the amount of injuries Lincoln stunned. It's no surprise that he'd been hospital bound for a long period of time recovering. Lincoln? Lincoln, can you hear me? Wake up! Miss, he's not conscious yet. The sleep medication will wear off for about another hour. Will he really forget all of us forever? I don't really know, kid. Like I said earlier, Lincoln may recover a little of his memories, but not all of them. He may not remember who all of you are, but he might recognize a few of you. I can only hope that Lincoln recovers enough of his memories so he doesn't forget all of you. Can we stay with him until he wakes up? I don't want Lincoln to be alone when he wakes him. Yes, of course. Visiting hours are from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Say as long as you wish. I have to attend some other patients right now, so I'll take my leaves for now. Just call me when or one of the nurses on the bedside speakers if Lincoln wakes up, and we'll be here to check on him momentarily. Lloyd then left the recovery room, leaving the Loud family alone with Lincoln. As soon as they were all alone, Lynn, Luan, and Rita glared over at Luan with an angry expression. So did her sisters. A rage that they all had in their eyes made Luan feel like a tiny little sheep being cornered by an angry wolf. Luan, I'm going to ask you only once, but you better answer me honestly. Do you know what you've done?
No.
You don't. I have a very hard time believing that.
I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You gotta believe me, I swear. I didn't know that leg on that fridge was loose enough to where it could cause to follow Lincoln.
Luan,
Luan, it doesn't matter whether or not you knew the leg was loose. I'm very sure you didn't intend to drop the fridge on Lincoln. But it's a cause and effect of your recklessness. I'm sorry. I don't want this to happen again. I'll never break anyone again. I swear.
Luan, do you have any idea how many times we heard you say that? How you change your ways to stop pulling pranks on us on April Fool's Day, and so on. Well, I hate to break it to you, Luan. We're not buying that anymore.
I guess I'm grounded forever.
Oh, you're damn right about that, Luan. But that's not all that's going to happen.
What do you mean?
As soon as we return home, I want you to go up to your room and remove every single prank prop, joke book, and anything that falls under the comedian category from it, and have them ready to go to Goodwill's. As today, your career as a prankster and comedian is over.
What? But comedy is my lifelong dream.
I'm sorry, Luan, but we can't allow you to pursue that career path any longer. The damages you caused to this family and to Lincoln because of your path as a comedian is irreversible and unforgettable. Every single year, during April Fool's Day, you find something new and sometimes very reckless ways to pull pranks on your family. And in my house, your mother and I are full-grown adults. And what do we do rather than stand up for the family and put a stop to you? We hide in the military-grade bunker like a bunch of cowards and let you have your way. Well, for the first time in our lives, your mother and I are growing a thicker spine and taking a stand this time. As today, pranking, telling puns, or jokes at any source is officially and strictly taboo in our household. And like I say, you're going to get rid of everything in your room that falls under the comedian category with an expression of your dummy, Mr. Coconuts. With the exceptions of your dummy, Mr. Coconuts.
And just so you know, Luan, this is not a prank to get you back like last year's with the stunt actors. This time we're being deadly serious here. In addition of this, you're no longer to be allowed working in that joke shop of yours. Your father and I will find a part-time job for you in order to help us pay of all Lincoln's hospital bills. And you also required to help us to take care of him for the rest of your lives. In our house. And also, you're grounded for the remainder of a year of what you've done. Let's just pray to God in heavens above that Lincoln doesn't die from this.
Luan felt horrible, and not just because she wasn't allowed to pursue her career or being grounded, but because of what Lincoln had been reduced as a result of her failed prank. She could barely hope that Lincoln would forgive her, even if he still even knew who she was, or she's still capable of doing so.
He won't die, right?
The doctor said Lincoln will live, but from the injuries he described to us, I just don't know.
I'm sorry,
Shut up, Luan. You know what? Just shut your damn mouth. I don't want to hear any more of how sorry you are. If you're really sorry, then you live with the consequences of your actions. And you start doing of what your mother and I told you to do. You're 17 years old and almost a legal adult, so you're going to be treated an adult in the face of the consequences like an adult. Luan just crowded away from the hospital bed and like saying nothing else. About an hour later, in the recovery room, Lincoln began to slowly open his eyes. His parents and his sister were unaware of it at first sense. They're all sitting in the chairs alongside the wall, yet his mother's attention was drawn to him when he let out a grunt from his bed.
Lincoln?
Lynn Sr. and the others also turned their attentions to Lincoln's bed as he opened his eyes fully, yet still visibly dazed from the sleep medication. Ugh. Lincoln! The rest of his family soon gathered around his bed, including Luan, who made a distant eye contact with Lincoln in the hope that he still recognized her. Lloyd called Dr. Floyd in on Lincoln's bedside speaker and informed that Lincoln had woken from his sleep.
Lincoln, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This happened to you. I never meant for this to happen. I swear, please forgive me.
Lincoln didn't respond, but he did widen his eyes and tilt his head to the left a bit with somewhat confused or dumbfounded expression on his face. He then turned his head to the left and then to the right and grunted. It's as if he has no idea where he is or what happened.
Lincoln, don't you? It's me, Luan. Don't you recognize me?
Lou and who you?
No! He doesn't know who you are, Luan. Why is he talking like that? Lincoln can't speak right because of a damage done to his brain, like a doctor said, remember?
Just then, the Dr. Floyd entered his room and approached Lincoln's bed. Ah, so he's awake. I'll need to ask him a few questions to see how much he remembers. Who are you? I'm Dr. Lloyd Florence. You're in Royal Woods Hospital, and you had an accident involving one of your sister's pranks. Do you remember anything, or do you recognize anyone in this room? Lincoln doesn't seem to understand what Lloyd was asking to do is the brain damage, but he appeared to trying to process what's going on around him. Lincoln looked down at himself, then up to that Lloyd, and with a single frown. What?
He had lost all of his memory. Did he really forgotten who all of his family members were? Lincoln?
Luan, Rita and Lynn Sr. tear up as they heard Lincoln ask that question. Had he lost all of his memories, or he really forgotten who all of his family were?
Lincoln, it's us, your family. It's me, your mother. Please remember.
Ma, ma, ma'am, I don't think he recognized you or any of the rest of your family. Like I said before, it may be a while until some of Lincoln's memories return. His cerebral cortex was got badly damaged, so it gets going to be a while until it heals enough for him to recover some of his memories.
So he'll remember us when that happens, right?
Perhaps, but it'll be impossible for us to tell us for now. But we'll all know in a few weeks or so. Lincoln, I don't know if you're gonna understand me yet, but do you recognize anyone in this room? Can you remember anything at all? Ma? Ma?
Yes, baby, it's me, your mother. Do you still recognize me?
Ma. A revealed expression came over Rita's face when she heard Lincoln's reply. He apparently had his memory of her, but she wasn't sure if Lincoln would remember the rest of his family yet. Who the?
They're your sisters, Lincoln. Your dad is a person next to me. You remember them, right?
The, Rita felt a jolt of sorrow rush through her when she said that, but she remembered what Lloyd had said about his memory gap due to the damaged cerebral cortex. She had only hoped that over time, Lincoln would remember his sisters as his brain healed. It appears that Lincoln seems to remember you, Miss Loud. However, she doesn't seem to remember his father or sisters yet. Hopefully, that might change his brain heals over time.
I hope so.
Does he know where he is or what happened to him? Lincoln seems to be aware of something out of place, but I doubt that he able to understand the current situations going on here. Remember, his mind has been reverted to a taller statue due to extreme brain damage he suffered from that fridge falling on him. But when I'm analyzed here, Lincoln still attends some higher forms of communication, as such as understanding speech and body language. However, as you can all see, he's unable to speak properly or form a full senses due to the brain damage he received. Frankly, I'm amazed that Lincoln's still able to understand human speech this early in this recovery. Let alone speak. This was something I didn't expect. At least Lincoln still remembered his mother. Lincoln just continued to turn his head left and right, staring out of the walls and at his family a few times. But he appeared to be lost of his own world and completely naive to anything that happened back at home. His expression was now that mentally moron personal, completely devoid of any emotions. Yet Lincoln appeared to realize that something was off since he was in a hospital bed with a bandage all over him. Dr. Laura was also amazed that Lincoln was even able to speak of all this early in his recovery, let alone to understand human speech. He had never dealt with children that he had received injuries severe. Yet Laura has seen a few patients brought into similar injuries from the past that he had results from high-speed vehicle crashes. Seeing a teenager patient a year ago that has been paralyzed from the wrist down and received heavy brain damage from a DUI crash involving a big red driver? The big red driver had passed out drunk behind the wheel of his truck and hit a small Saigon XD at a full 85 mph, mortally wounding a male teenager driver inside of it. His injuries were almost as bad as Lincoln, but unlike Lincoln, he didn't survive from the trip to hospital and succumbed to his injuries, which resulted to his death. Lloyd could only hope that Lincoln wouldn't meet the same fate, but even if he wouldn't be exactly living like he has stated earlier. This is probably the only patient I've seen survive this long after receiving the type of injuries Lincoln received.
None of the other patients have seen the past several injuries like this for more than an hour. Yet Lincoln is still living and breathing. How many patients have you seen that injury that way that Lincoln did? If I remember correctly, about four. They're all adults with the exceptions of one being a teenager driver. But unlike Lincoln here, none of them survived far more than an hour or two at best. So I have to say that he's the luckiest kid alive. I'm not denying divine intervention being a possibility given the circumstances here. Normally, any person at this age would usually die from having a heavy appliance from the refrigerator drop on them, but Lincoln survived it. But how will he live? He'll 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 have a look after for the rest of his life, like I mentioned before. Lincoln will have a confined to a wheelchair since he's paralyzed from the wrist down, and he'll definitely have to reductate it since his mind when set back as a toddler, like a statue due to the brain damage he received from the brain accident. Since he'll have to outlive your parents, you and your sisters will need to look after him when that time comes. I know this may be hard for all of you, but this is how it's going to be. Lincoln's parents and sisters all gaze at him with tears in their eyes, including Luan. She's no longer cared that she's grounded and forced to give up comedy for life, not after seeing just how bad Lincoln was. After waking up, Luan would gladly give it all up just to see her brother back to normal again. But she knew this is impossible. Luan now began to reflect in all the time that her parents and her sisters had warned her to stop with the pranks, but now she promised many times over that she'd go uneasy on him, on them, and him. From now on, the only to go back a few words afterwards. As a result of Luan's recklessness, Lincoln had almost been killed. I should have just quit like you all said to. I'm sorry, Lincoln. You're like this because of me. It's all my fault. Luan knew that her apology would never make up for the mistakes that she had made, but she could only hope that her family would forgive her as time went on. But she prayed that Lincoln would remember her over time once recovered from injuries. Luan don't know if Lincoln would forgive her if his memory events return once his brain healed. She could only hope that his mind wasn't too far gone for him to still understand forgiveness. For Luan, things seems hopeless, but she doesn't know. She didn't know what to do. Luan had no doubt that her friends, Lincoln's friends, would hate her very existence once they learned about what happened to Lincoln as a result of her recklessness pranking. But she couldn't blame anyone for but herself. If that comes to that, this was a burden that Lincoln would knew that she'd bear for the rest of her life, and she would take it for her to her grave. Comedy meant nothing to Luan now, only her brother. Forgive me, Lincoln. Just for the brief second, Luan could have sworn and noticed a spark of recognition in his eye.